Liverpool have a new manager with a new style of play. It's the start of a new era. Everything is new, except for the players, because Liverpool haven't signed anyone yet. But who should they sign? Welcome to Sensible Transfers, where we look for weaknesses in squads and identify solutions to those problems. It's not based on rumour or gossip. Oh no! It's based on data, tactics, and opinion. And so first we have to work out what Liverpool actually need, but to do that we have to understand how they're going to play. And helpfully, Curtis Jones has revealed a little bit about that. He said, and this is his voice, "In the past it was a rush to get the ball back, a bit too direct, up and down, up and down. Now we want to have all the ball and completely kill a team." But what does that look like on the pitch? What will the difference be between Klopp's Liverpool and Slot's Liverpool? Well, it's most likely going to look like a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3. We know that. It looks something like this, with lots of variations, lots of rotations, lots of fluid movement to help with build-up and progressing the ball through the pitch. Now you'll have a back four almost always, but that will turn into a three at certain times. Sometimes it'll be a three like this, with one of the fullbacks dropping in. You'll usually have a double pivot, so you always work with this 3 and the 2, but sometimes both fullbacks will invert. So what you might get is something like this, with a 2 and a 3. But he likes to involve his goalkeeper a lot in build-up as well, so sometimes that will look like a 3 and a 3 if you just include them like this. Then you've got players further forward up the pitch as well. And the wingers will stay wide, especially in build-up. So if you're playing against, let's put them against a back four here. What this does is you have wingers wide, so that stretches defence between the centre-backs and the full-backs, and you have one striker trying to pin them backwards. And this creates room for underlapping runs from midfielders like this sort of thing here. But also times, if the ball comes to Salah and he wants to move inside the pitch, then you'll get an overlapping run from somewhere, either Alexander-Arnold or possibly Szoboszlai, something like this. Lots and lots of rotations. And one of the most common rotations that Flyers, one of the midfielders in this double pivot, would drop into this space here. So the back three might be formed of 2 centre-backs and a midfielder. Then these guys can move forward. So say this wide player here wants to come inside the pitch, you get the overlapping run from the fullback. You've got a striker here. You might have Salah here who moves inside as well, with Szoboszlai moving out wide on the rotation. And then what you end up with is something like a 3-2-5. So you always get these kind of 3-2-5 shapes in build-up and when they progress into the final third from Slot's teams. And of course this helps outnumber the opposition in the back line if they're playing the back four, but also you play the back three with this midfielder dropping in, because then that gives you an advantage against the 2-man opposition press. They're trying to get you here. So this is what they do. But another thing they do to try and get the ball from back to front is use third-man combinations, really common. And one of those, an example of that might be, say Jones might fire the ball forward to Nunez, who lays it off to Endo, and then they're in space. Because you can't get the ball into Endo, first of all, you have to go back to someone to get back to him. So you'll see third-man combinations all over the place. And then see Endo's got it, he might fire out to Salah, pushes it back to Alexander-Arnold. Lots and lots of combinations in these third-man movements. But you see those sometimes with Klopp's teams as well. It's quite a Brighton thing to see. But another thing you see that's different between Slot's team and Klopp's team is how they play out of possession. Slot's team will press high, especially if a team are playing backward or sideways passes, and they'll try and inch them back towards their own goal by closing down these short passes and getting them to these dangerous positions. But when they win the ball back, there's an opportunity to attack, they might do it, but the real point of winning the ball high and instantly after losing it is to try and regain control. Whereas Klopp's teams in the past might have won the ball by pouncing on it with all players jumping into there and then going to try and counter-attack. Slot's team wins the ball and tries to get back into their shape to control the pitch, so you have more control of the game. And the reason you do this is that, sure enough, if you win the ball back high up the pitch or it's in transition, you might get a chance to counter-attack and score, but you leave yourself open to the chance of a counter-attack against your own team. And as you can see here, Liverpool were vulnerable on the counter-attack last season. So Slot wants control, Klopp wanted more kind of opening up the team and going at them with a counter press and going like that. So we know the differences are there out of possession, but they will press high. So now we know how Liverpool are probably going to play. We can look at the squad and work out where the weaknesses might be in this new style of play and what they need. And if we look at this squad, what we see is it's actually pretty good. It's pretty well covered in all positions. They've got lots of different options, but we have to find weaknesses. And I can find some, starting with the centre backs, because Joel Matip has left. Then there's probably going to be something they can do over here, and probably something they can do in this position as well. But let's start with centre-backs, a very exciting position indeed. A few things to consider with Liverpool, and the first of all is, who is the long-term replacement for Virgil van Dijk when he eventually leaves? Are Quansah and Konate good enough, especially for what Slot wants them to do? And the role of fullbacks in Slot's tactics. Does he need a different profile of player, especially on the left-hand side? Let's start with right centre-backs, and we know that they're going to end up in this back three quite a lot of the time, so someone has to be good in the the ball. Now, Konaté's weaknesses are probably in possession. That's where they can maybe improve on there. I like him as a player. And Quansah is quite good in possession, but he's learning and still has a couple of mistakes in him. So this position is perhaps weak. You need someone to give them backup in that area. And I have a few suggestions, starting with Antonio Silva of Benfica. I really like this player. He is one of those rare young captains that comes along every now and again. He's already captained Benfica at certain times. He's like a young Ruben Dias, but he's really good on the ball at playing it forward. You can see from aggressive passes and his pass completion. Now, he'd be very expensive because he is one of those high potential wonder kid types that you often get. But another player I think could do a job for Liverpool and would give them a different tactical option is Ousmane Diomande. Also plays in Portugal, he plays for Sporting. Now, Diomande tends to play on the right-hand side of a back three, but he's really good on the ball. As you can see, his passes and his progressive carries are pretty high for a centre-back, and his defensive numbers are oddly low. Won the league with Sporting last season. Diomande would come in here and almost be part of this back three when they build up in this shape particularly, and he's really strong on the ball. So you could even have Alexander-Arnold pushing forward, and he could become, like at Man City with John Stones moving into midfield, one of these sorts of players, really strong on the ball. So it's a possible tactical fit. He has tended to play as part of a back three though, which is different to playing as a two. Perhaps it's not perfect. But you don't want to halt Quansah's development. Maybe he's fine as backup to Konaté for now. Maybe it does work. So let's look at left centre back instead, and then we can look at some options there. Edmund Tapsoba, who's playing at Bayer Leverkusen, can play on either side, left or right centre back. He's more of a ball winner and a ball carrier, someone who goes to attack the play and shut it down early, and then can bring the ball out from the back. But again, plays mostly in a back three. But what about the left back? Because that's going to affect everything else that goes on with this team. So right now you have Andy Robertson as the left back, who will often play as a left centre back if they play this back three when they shift into that shape. Now Robertson is naturally better at going forward with the ball. He's more of a winger than he is a defender probably. And so how about you bring in a player who could sit long term as a left centre back, but also be a player who moves out to the left back position and help with those rotations. And so one of my sensible picks is Nico Schlotterbeck of Borussia Dortmund, who is a centre back who plays left back and can also go forward as well as joining into this back three and helping with your ball progression through the lines. And the data says he'd probably fit into that role too. He's not Virgil van Dijk, but he'd give you something different at the left back position to help with the way he wants to progress. This is more of a tactical fit. So how about another player who's maybe not as expensive as Schlotterbeck, who might be a long-term solution that they can build into this role while Slot develops his team, if he's there for the next 5 years, say. And my next sensible pick is a youngster who could become a top-level player, and that is Jorel Hato of Ajax. He's only 18 years old, he's already starting every single game, his numbers are amazing. Now Hato can play at left centre-back, he can play at left-back as well, but he's multi-positional, he's also able to play in midfield, and you'll often see him play for Ajax, getting the ball and ending up in these attacking areas here. And I think this is relevant because a lot of teams now in football play a man-marking system out of possession. And so one way to drag that man-marking setup apart is to have players who go places you probably don't want them to. If he goes from here, who's meant to track him? Is it this guy? Is it this guy? Is it centre-back? You don't know. And Hato's one of those players who might be a long-term solution to fixing tactical problems that develop in the Premier League. But I have one more. I said I had a few. So this is my actual sensible transfer pick for Liverpool. He would cost a bit of money, but he's going to be one of the best centre-backs in the world, in my opinion. And that is, of course, Giorgio Scalvini of Atalanta. Now, he's got great numbers, as you can probably see here. But the important thing is that Scalvini solves what they need right now, and that is someone who can play both left and right centre-back, who gives you future-proofing for a kind of player who's happy to carry the ball into midfield and go forward, should that be the way that tactics evolve over time. But he's also just a great centre-back. He does things that Liverpool would need from a centre-back, like stepping in to intercept the ball. You can see here, this is the top 5 leagues, and he is 9th for interceptions made, which is pretty good for any defender anyway. And so Scalvini, for me, would be the kind of top-level signing Liverpool could make if they could find the money, if they needed to sign someone like that long-term to replace Van Dijk, but to also give backup to everything else they need at the moment. But the position that everyone's really talking about with Liverpool is who should be their number 6. And what do we mean by number 6? Because there's various different ways to play this role, this position. Now, essentially it's a defensive midfielder, and what they have right now is Wataru Endo, who is the most defensively minded of all those players. And what I mean by that is that he's the one who tends to win the ball and then does something with it afterwards, whether that's playing it short or whether you carry it. You want to decide what you want your defensive midfielder to do. What do Liverpool need in this position? We know they play a double pivot usually with these two players here. They'll always be staggered, one will be slightly deeper than the other, so you have this sort of option here. It's going to be someone like Curtis Jones or Alexis McAllister, who plays in this other midfield slot. So someone they need has the confidence complement that other midfielder, probably be good at keeping the ball, probably be good at winning the ball back. But what do they really need? Well, if we look at some of the data that might support what we're trying to look for, we can see that Endo was actually pretty good at retaining possession last season. He's a lot better than people seem to think he is. But how about we go up this list and find someone who's higher that they could bring in? And that's when we come to someone like Billy Gilmour, who might actually be a reasonable option for Liverpool to buy in this role. Because Gilmour might not have the aggressiveness and the physicality you want of this role, but he'd give you a level of control in this midfield when you're trying to build from the back. If it's about having control and keeping it as you play through lines, he's going to be very good at doing that. And we talked about third man combinations earlier. Guess what Gilmour's really good at? Being in space to help with these movements where you can play third man combinations and carry the ball forward. And another option, if it's not Billy Gilmour, someone that might be a bit more affordable because Brighton do sell for profit, is Samuel Ritchie of Torino. Now he's another kind of regista type player, a deep lying playmaker who plays behind midfielders for Torino. Also probably lacks the aggressiveness and the physicality you want of someone to win the ball back, because you have a ball player really in McAllister and in Curtis Jones. So maybe you need someone that's a bit different in profile. And that's where you start looking at ball winners, players like Manu Kone of Borussia Mönchengladbach. Now, he's been linked with a lot of moves this summer as well. He's more of a player who wins the ball back and then carries it. As you can see, successful take-ons is very high, which might not be what you want in that position. You might not want a player who's winning the ball back and then going. You want someone who has control, even though Kone would help you win the ball back and burst in transitional moments. And so then you're looking at a player possibly who might be able to come in and offer something more, someone who can play at centre back as well, a bit more like that Fabinho role, someone who's high potential but isn't quite there yet, someone who might be cheap. And so when I look at all those parameters and data and compare players to Liverpool sixes of the past, like Fabinho, I've come up with Eric Martel, who currently plays for Köln in Germany. Now, Martel is a player you might have to take a bit of a punt on, but he profiles quite similarly-ish to João Palhinha, who would be quite a good fit for what Liverpool want. But he doesn't meet the parameters of being under 24. And he's under 24, he's 22, which is under 24. And the thing with Martel is that he's on the up, and he's been playing first team level football since he was 18 when he was in Austria. A couple of seasons there, went to Köln in the Bundesliga obviously, 2 seasons there. He can play all those positions, he's got good out of possession numbers, and so although you would get that positional flexibility of someone who can help you with centre-back play and also break play up in the midfield and then move it on, he's maybe not the technical level that the Liverpool number 6 should be, certainly not now, and they already have players there, therefore it's not sensible. So who is the sensible option here? Well, the sensible option for me is to keep using Endo for now. He is actually quite good, but also just coach Bajcetic and turn him into the player that he could be. This could be the solution to Liverpool's number 6 problem going forward. A great player, injured for most of last season, he could be it. They've also got Tyler Morton, who could develop into a great player as well on the bench. And one of the things that Arne Slot does best, or has done best in the past, is make players better. Loads of players came into Feyenoord, got better, got sold on to other places. And so there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't do the same thing with Bajcetic and turn him in to the 6 that they want, dealing with the players they have. And also you want time for Slot to be at this team and turn it into his own one. There's no point going big straight away. Just let it go for a while. Let's see how it lies. And then you can buy someone that you know you need to buy. And so the final position we can improve for Liverpool potentially is Mo Salah. But how do you improve this part of the pitch? Because he's one of the best players in the world, still one of the best goal scorers, one of the best assisters that you get in this position anywhere. Well, as we know, Slot likes his wingers to stay wide. And guess what Salah is better at doing? Playing inside this sort of position here. So if you have width, it means you stretch the back line. As we know, it creates underlapping movement for players like this. There will be rotations, but what you want is a player probably who can play on the outside and the inside of a fullback. Now Salah can do it a little bit, but he's not really a winger. He's an inside forward that plays around this position. So we could look at a player who could be that outside and inside winger to hold the width and give them something tactically different. And that player, of course, is Nico Williams, except it's not, because he's not going to go anywhere. Athletic Bilbao are keeping him this season, it looks like, and we've recommended him for everyone because he's one of the few elite players who isn't already at a top tier club. So let's go down a little bit and try and find someone sensible, a future candidate, because Salah is going to play every game that he can. Who else could be this future star? I've got one player for you, which is maybe a controversial one, because Yeremy Pino of Villarreal, a really highly tipped, high potential wonder kid, can play outside, inside, plays in this sort of pocket here, really good at going past people, really good technical level and a high ceiling. But Had a very serious injury last season for Villarreal, did a cruciate ligament, which kept him out until I think almost now. So he's probably a player they'd keep watching, scouting to see if he get back to the same level, and then he could be the future of a team like Liverpool. So it's not sensible yet, it's not sensible. But I'll tell you who is sensible, and that is our final pick, and that is Pedro Neto of Wolves. One of the best players in the Premier League, easily, has had injury problems, so not ideal, but you'd get him to play either side, left or right, if you needed him right now. Again, it's sensible, but it's also not, because Salah will play most of the games, and that's maybe not perfect to have a player as good as that who can't get in the team. But Liverpool have Champions League, Cups and League to manage. You need top level players to rotate and give each other a break. And Salah, like all humans, is getting older. But that brings me back to my final point of being sensible. You don't always have to buy players to improve your team. And you have a manager like Arne Slot, you can improve them. And so the really sensible thing to do for me is to give Ben Doak minutes behind Salah, turn him into the player that he could be. Again, he's an outside or inside winger. He's right-footed, so that suits playing in the width here. He can get minutes to try and turn himself into the player he could be. Had an injury last season as well, but this could be the kind of player they want to turn into it. And if not him, they also have Harvey Elliott, who can play as the number 10 or the wide midfielder in the system, can also play off the right. And he's really young too, remember? It needs minutes to develop and it needs time to turn into the player he could be. So Liverpool have lots of options, and you can see why they haven't gone early in the transfer market. Slot wants to learn his players and see what he has. But if I could choose a sensible team for them to sign, if they do sign anyone this summer, something like this. Now, this is maybe the dream team version of it, because what you have is Salah backed up by Neto on this side here. Then what you've got is Hato as a backup to Robertson and different tactical option. Then you've got Scalvini in at right back, who can also deputise for Van Dijk, and you can still play Konate or Quansah. But that's what I think sensible transfers for Liverpool could, or maybe should look like. Feel free to tell us who you think sensible options would be for them and what you think of my options here. That's all I've got for you. Goodbye.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Amy Lawrence and Rafa Honigstein. With the latest transfer news and insights on every Premier League story that matters, theathletic.com puts you inside football, and you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.